Hi, everyone. I just wanted to thank you for joining us this evening for this webinar session with the lovely Dr. Varden. So we're going to be exploring some of the health and genetics surrounding women's health specifically, because it's such an important conversation. We're just letting everybody trickle in right now. So thank you for your patience. We'll hopefully get started in a few minutes. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone again. So I just wanted to hop on again just before Dr. Varden turns on her camera and starts our session. We will have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. If you do have any questions you want answered, we just ask that you use the Q&A function on the Zoom chat, just so it doesn't get lost in the general chat that we've got going on. And without any further ado, here is Dr. Varden. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this evening or this afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. I really appreciate you all taking the time out to be here to listen to me talk about your DNA and how this relates to your health as a woman. And for all of you gentlemen out there, I'm certainly not going to forget about you. I'm sure you are here to help support the women in your life, and that is so appreciated. That helps to build that better bond between you and help strengthen those relationships when you understand how we as women, how our bodies work, how our hormones are changing and affecting our lives, and then diving into knowing how our DNA relates to all that, that we're really not going crazy. We are not, victims to our hormones, that we can actually take charge and we can start using this information to our benefits. So that way we can have more calm lives that we can take charge of. So my name is Dr. Laura Varden. I am a PhD, a scientist by training in academics. I have specialties in cellular biology, molecular genetics, neuroscience, biomedical engineering, a bunch of other things. But I'm also an adjunct professor at Clarkson University. I am an in-house clinician here at the DNA company. My general title of the things that I do is I am a functional genomics and holistic health practitioner. Now, as you can see, all the letters here. What those mean is that I'm a board certified holistic health practitioner. I am a certified functional nutrition counselor, a certified functional genomics practitioner, and a licensed ecclesiastical holistic practitioner. So in any case, I ultimately am here to serve you, to help you understand your genes, your life, to be able to give you the control over that. So again, you can be the best person that you can be, so you can have control as much as you can over things that are going on. So let's dive into hormones, unlocking these secrets of women's health when it comes to utilizing and knowing your DNA. When we look at hormones, and I do want to say that when we talk about hormones, this is probably the most complex, nuanced area of all the reports that you get with our DNA reports. But even then, in general, hormones are so intricate because they do run and work everything. And we're not just talking about the sex hormones, we're talking about all the hormones, because cortisol, a hormone, leptin, ghrelin, those have to deal with your hunger responses. When you're talking about vitamin D, which is a hormone, all of these things really affect everything else. Everything is connected. And it's important that we are aware of how these hormones affect us, how they work with the way that each of these metabolites work in the system, what they do, about their clearance, working into detoxification, which we're going to talk about as well. So there's so much going on that even with the hormone reports that I'm going to be showing you, even though we focus more on the sex hormones and the detoxification hormones, it's giving you a good picture into how this reflects upon the way that you are made, which is beautiful. It is perfect, but it is different from the other people around you. It's all a little different. And then we have to consider the way that our hormones are expressed, our genes are expressed, and that is through epigenetics. And that's what we do here. Not only are we showing you your genes, which you have, you were born with, you will die with, okay? Those don't change. What changes is their expression. So knowing that, we can then tweak and manipulate how they are expressed. Something I want to give a little bit of an indication on that I've spoken before in another webinar, and I also talk about with each of my clients, is that with the genes that we are born with, it's kind of like a dimmer switch, okay? So we have this dimmer switch that we can move that dimmer switch up and down. We can make it brighter, make it darker. Either way, you are stuck within the confines of that dimmer switch. So basically, in the relation of genes, you have your genes, you can turn them up or you can turn them down, but you can't go beyond that. Where you can have this gene here, someone else, their gene may be like this. So they actually have movement beyond you. But that's okay. Knowing that gives us the information to say, okay, this is what I have to work with. So I'm going to do things that make sure that I move that dimmer switch in a spot that is optimal, that makes me feel good, that gives me energy, that makes my hormones more regulated and balanced. So that's what we're going to be working with. When we're looking at your hormones, at your hormone profile, there are three major areas of that hormone cascade that we look at. The first one, we're looking at the dominance. We look at what your profile is as far as what do you make. When you're talking about the particular hormones that we have, there are two general aspects. We have your androgens and we have your estrogens, okay? Men and women, we both make them. We both need them. They are both very, very necessary. It is just the percentages of which are different. Men generally make a lot more androgens. These are your testosterones and your those different DHT, okay? All of these different testosterones and androgens, they make more. We make a little less, but we still make them. And actually, when you look at estrogen and testosterone levels within women ourselves, we actually make more testosterone than we do estrogen. So in any case, when we're talking about the estrogens and androgens, men make estrogens too. Getting back to women, depending on how our genes are expressing, how, what we have, our dimmer switch, looking at that can determine whether or not we have a particular dominance or balance, whether we are androgen dominant, whether we are estrogen dominant, whether we are co-dominant, or whether we are estrogen balanced or just generally balanced. Our genes tells us that. The second area that we look at is we're looking at hormone quality. Is what you're making toxic or harmful? Because in hormones, it is the metabolites, it's how they work. How much are we making that can affect us? It can affect our mood and behavior. It can affect any inflammation that we may have going on. It can affect how our general body is working. But thankfully, again, within that dimmer switch, due to epigenetics, our lifestyle, our diet, our toxic load, we can actually manipulate within there to help attenuate or lessen any inflammation or toxic load, okay? But knowing your genes, we as the clinicians and you as your own biohackers or, looking into things, you can work to help make that more beneficial to you. The third area that we look at is clearance. How well are you clearing the hormones and these metabolites? This gets into the detoxification pathways that I was talking about. This is really important because we can have problems with our detoxification. Genetically speaking, this can be an issue. If you're weak at your methylation pathway, and there's more than just the MTHFR gene there, we actually look at several genes in that entire pathway to give us an idea at how well you are methylating. Methylation is very important when it comes to the clearance of the estrogen metabolites. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through today's webinar. This is really important to know. And this is something that your genes, through having your DNA done in our reports, can give us insight on to say, okay, here you're weak, here you're strong. Let's make sure that we lean into the strong, support that, but then also look to see where and which pathways are weak. So that way we know how to strategically support them, because we want you healthy. We want you to be clearing any inflammatory metabolites, any toxins, to make sure that you are feeling the best you can. It also allows us ideas looking at all of these three major areas to help figure out what is best for you when it comes to hormone replacement therapies. Is that the best thing for you? Or, for any type of birth control planning, what is the best way for you? Your genes and knowing your pathways, these cascades, allows us better insight to target treatment, to target the way you should be handling, or the best way you could be handling on working through these problems, or so you don't have problems, or say you do. Say you have PCOS, say you have fibroids, Say you currently have maybe slight dysplasia of the cervix, those precancerous cells, or you're having amenorrhea, which means a cessation where you don't have your period and you want to figure out what's going on. Or say you're having infertility issues. Knowing your DNA can help with that. It helps target where we can work into treatment. It helps, even if you are working with your current gynecologist or specialist, this information can just be another piece of the puzzle to show you and help you get better treatment quicker. So let's dive into actually an example. And I'm going to take me, and I am going to be using my own reports to show you. Something I want to mention is that the things that I mentioned as far as different types of supplements, treatments, and other things, I say this in a general sense because although I'm a doctor, I'm not an MD. I do not diagnose and prescribe. I recommend, I educate. I educate you on your DNA, on information that I have learned through my education, through my experience, through my research, to help you make better choices. But it ultimately is up to you to make the changes necessary, okay? And it's also something that, because I am not an MD, I can't prescribe, I can't say, this is what you should do. Well, or this is what, prescribing your medications. We do have MDs on staff. We have expanded our staff and our services to offer that. Okay, so if you have a gynecologist, a doctor, and they just are maybe not helping you exactly the way you want, they don't know about DNA, they're not comfortable with that kind of thing, we do have services available that we can help you with that. We can write prescriptions, our MDs can write prescriptions. So I want to let you know that we do have these services for you. So you won't just be given, oh, here's some DNA information. See ya, good luck. No, we will help and walk you through this. If you need testing done, and your general practitioner, your gynecologist, or whomever you are currently seeing doesn't know the test, for example, a Dutch test, which is a dried urine, a complete hormone test. If they don't want to have you take that test because they don't know what to do with it, we can do that. We on staff know how to read those tests. We can get them ordered for you. So please know that we've got you covered. So let me share screen and we will go in to looking at my report. Now, this is my Hormone Pulse report. And as I go through, you will see that it has a lot of information, a lot of technical information. Now, this is not something that you would get. This is actually a report that's more of an in-house technical clinical report. But I want to show it to you because it gives more in-depth information about the pathways, about basic information on what you're going to see. Now, if you are a client of mine, and this will, start being program-wide, but I actually do show you your sex hormone pathway chart. This is something, actually, I'll give you a little sneak peek and show you what it looks like. It looks like this right here. And I know this may look like just a bunch of stuff, just stoplights and oh my gosh, we'll get into that. But you'll understand a lot more when we're done here tonight. So that is something, though, that I do provide when you are a client of mine, that you will get and you will understand it when we go over it. So getting back to the Hormone Pulse report. Here there are lots of information that talks about how to interpret the results. Now, something here, like you saw on my sex hormone pathway chart, lots of stoplights. I want to emphasize and let you know that the stoplights, green does not always mean good, red, bad, and so on and so forth. The main aspect and the main cue, the visual cue for this, is that these stoplights represent the speed of which the processes are taking place. Really, the only time that the red, the red light means bad is in, and actually, I'm going to switch over for just a second. The only time that the red light is not so good, meaning not necessarily just slow, but meaning not so good, is in the detoxification pathways. Okay. But when it comes to the step 1 and step 2 of this sex hormone pathway cascade, the red light just means that it's done slowly. The green lights that it's done at a more increased rate. So I just wanted to make that clarification as we're going through. So in this chart, in this cascade, first of all, when we're talking about hormones, this is the way that our hormones are converted and worked. We all start off with cholesterol. Cholesterol is the backbone of our sex hormones. They are extremely important. This is why these low cholesterol, low fats, or virtually no fats, high carbohydrate diets that we were pushed back like in the 80s and early 90s, they didn't work well. They ended up screwing up our hormones because it lowered the cholesterol levels so much where we didn't have that backbone for making our sex hormones. Cholesterol is also really important for cellular wall integrity. All of our cells are made with a lipid bilayer, lipid meaning fat. It's a double-walled fat layer. Cholesterol is a part of that. It is very important for the health of every single cell in the body, and there are trillions of cells in the body. So cholesterol is important. We need to keep it in a balanced way. We don't want it way too high, but we also don't want to cut out all of our cholesterol and think it's the bad guy and not have enough. So here we have cholesterol, and I'll make this a little bit bigger. Here we have cholesterol. The cholesterol makes our progesterones and our cortisol. Cortisol is also not a bad guy. Cortisol is important because that's what gives us that quick energy. Okay. We need that. Okay. Especially when it comes for acute times where we need quick energy or a jolt. When we wake up, okay, we need to have that cortisol to feel the energy. That also works into our testosterone. Our testosterone levels are higher in the morning. These are important. We just don't want cholesterol being high all the time. That's where we get into chronic issues, chronic stress. We end up being in that state, that sympathetic state too long. We don't want that. It's important for short periods of time, not all the time. We want to be in a more parasympathetic state most of the time. That's your rest and digest, that calm state, the state at which we are healing, where we get creative, where we can do more things. We can think more clearly. Okay. So in this, very important. But here we are starting with progesterones. Progesterones are converted into testosterone through the CYP17A1 gene. From testosterone can go in different pathways. One of them is being cleared. This is done through the CYP3A4 gene pathway, as well as through the UGT pathway. This is your glucuronidation. This is a phase 2 detoxification pathway. So anytime you see a UGT gene, that is a glucuronidation pathway gene. And this also works into clearing these androgens, these testosterone, because dihydrotestosterone is also an androgen. And I want to let you know, dihydrotestosterone is different from testosterone because it's 5 times more potent. It is the testosterone on steroids. It's what gives men, the manly men, you know, the extra hair, the Adam's apple, putting on more lean muscle, you know, quickly and easily, and keeping it. Okay, this is very important for men to have. Women to have too, just not so much. Okay, obviously we don't want too much, because it's also something that having too much for men can lead to prostate cancer or enlarged prostates. It's also something that women that make more of it can lose more hair, because that works into that male pattern balding. So by knowing your genes, you can see where you're leaning into, and then, like I said, be able to manipulate that dimmer switch, which is the epigenetics, by taking certain foods that have certain compounds that can help attenuate or bring down the amount of dihydrotestosterone that you may be making. Another pathway that testosterone can take is through aromatization. This is the CYP19A1 gene. This turns testosterone into estrogens. I don't know if everybody knew that, but yes, testosterone turns into estrogen. And depending on how quickly you do that, as well as the combination of all these other pathways, this determines the type of hormone profile that you have. Whether you are androgen dominant, estrogen dominant, balanced. Okay, this is what I was talking about earlier. Looking at all of these and the way that we assess the way your hormones are working, how quickly they convert, and how quickly they clear, this determines your hormone profile. Now, as we're going through, this talks more about each of the particular sex hormones, your progesterones, your androgens, your estrogens. And this is the larger path. Here, a little bit more of the pathway. Ooh, a little too much. There we go. That actually works through and shows how intricate all of these genes and their hormones, their subsequent made hormones are. So this is just another way, instead of the stoplights, it just kind of works through and tells you which genes do what and what each of these metabolites and hormones are in each of their forms. So as we go through, when it comes to estrogen, and here, let me make this a little bit smaller so you can see mine. When it comes to these hormones, for example, yours, okay, you will have each of these laid out. So I'm using mine, for example. I happen to make, when I have my progesterones, I turn that into testosterone at a more increased rate. Not really fast, but at a slightly increased rate. So I've got a lot of testosterone here. Now, for me, I clear some of those testosterones. Actually, you can see where it is hydroxylated slowly, but on this side, I clear it quickly. So in that, we kind of look at it in more of a general sense, that I do this in a more moderate to fast rate overall. I'm not going to go into all of the details of each of these because I think for this, it doesn't matter so much. It's just a matter of, for me personally, I do clear out those testosterones, which are very good. Also, the fact that I convert testosterone into dihydrotestosterone through the SRD5A2 gene slowly. Now, this is ideal for a woman, okay? But I also clear what I do make very quickly. What this means to me is that I can put on muscle, lean muscle, but I have to work really hard at it. I don't keep it very easily. I have to work at it. And the fact that I make, I turn testosterone into estrogen at an increased rate, not super fast, but at an increased rate, it is something that when I put on muscle, I can tend to bulk up a little bit more. Now, I do want to break the myth that like, oh, with fasting and working out at a gym, and I'm going to bulk up and look like, Mrs. Hulk. No. I would really have to do a lot of concentrated work, probably take very specified hormone boosters and really doing that to bulk up and look like, Mrs. Universe or something, and I'm talking about in the bodybuilding sense, Mrs. Universe. But it is something that as an athlete, when I was younger, I mean, I used to be a professional figure skater. I did like virtually every sport. I loved to be in sports. And I never bulked up like that, like looking like, major bodybuilder. I did work out a lot and I had very defined muscles and I was very, very strong. But it was difficult for me to get that really lean cut look because that's not what my hormones are based on. I was solid, I was strong. Yes, you could see it. And depending on times that I cut down fats enough where I, really leaned down, yes, you could definitely see more of the muscle cuts and everything else. But just in a regular sense, even if I worked out, quite a bit, it would be more difficult for me to, have more of that very lean, tight look. I'd have to work really hard for it. So these are the types of things that based on your hormones, this reflects in the phenotype, how it looks in your body shape, in the way that your body morphology is. This is all indicative of your genes, of how you are built. But the nice thing is that what you ask for your body, it will give you. So when I work out more, I will produce more. Remember that dimmer switch? I can produce some more of that dihydrotestosterone, giving me even more energy and more strength and doing that, hitting into that warrior gene, okay, that strength. Even though I do clear it quickly, yes, I also bind well. That's the AR gene, okay, that which is the androgen receptor. It's not shown on here, but I do have it on the sex hormone pathway chart right here. I bind very well. So this is something I can keep in mind of what my expectations are. Now, when it comes to step 2, looking at the metabolites that estrogen makes, because really when it comes to estrogen, that bioactive way that estrogen works, it's in its metabolites. What do they do? How is it responding? Because estrogen is very important for so many things. It is important for brain health. It is important for your skeletal system, for the strength of your bones, so we don't have osteoporosis. Testosterone is too. It is good for your libido, okay? And through all this, we have to be aware of what metabolites we are making. Now, in the metabolites, this is something that when we think of an ideal profile, we would like to see all of these red. We don't want to be making, a lot of any one in particular, because it can become very inflammatory. Now, I do want to tell you that the 2-hydroxyestrone, this is a metabolite that is very beneficial during the menses years when you're having your period. So you would think, oh, well, wouldn't we want that to be fast? Well, yes and no. Just because it's red doesn't mean we're not making any at all. We are, just not at a fast rate. We are making it at a nice, steady, slower rate. The reason why I say we don't want a lot of the 2-hydroxyestrone, or why we say that it's ideal for it to be slower, is because when we go through perimenopause and menopause, this metabolite becomes more inflammatory. That can be a problem. Obviously, we don't want a lot of inflammation. So yes, it works well during the menses years, but not so well after. And it has been said, if you participated in the summit, in the Fast Like a Girl summit, several of the doctors had mentioned, we start going through menopause, we start like perimenopause as early as our mid-30s. I mean, holy moly, that's a long time to be going through perimenopause. And, yes, we can be having our cycle and having children during this time, even, up through our late 40s and early 50s. Yes, but our bodies are still shifting in our hormones. So knowing how our hormones work, this can help us to be able to adjust as we go, especially if we start having some problems. When we get into the 4 and 16 alpha hydroxys, these are more inflammatory, period. They are. Not really pun intended, but these metabolites are much more, they're much stronger. Okay, they have a more estrogenic effect. That's what makes them more inflammatory. They're still very important. We still need them, but it is through methylation of the 2-hydroxy and 4-hydroxy metabolites that help to, one, make the 2-hydroxyestrone more beneficial and do its job better. For the 4-hydroxy, methylation actually helps to lessen its inflammatory effects. If you have a poor methylation pathway and the 4-hydroxy is not being methylated appropriately, that can actually cause some DNA damage. If we are having DNA damage, this is where precancerous cells and moving into cancer comes in. We don't want that. Spoiler alert, though, everyone has some cancerous or precancerous cells in their body at all times. It's just our bodies, in their ultimate brilliance and balance, make sure that those cells do not multiply to a point where they become tumorous, whether benign or in a metastasized state, in a cancerous state. This is what is so important with our bodies, that we allow it, we give it what it needs to be able to keep that balance, to be able to do the things necessary, so that way it puts those cancer cells, the DNA damaged cells, that it either fixes the DNA in its cycle, or that it does autophagy, okay, that it kills those cells and recycles them, so that way they don't create havoc. So this is why our detox pathways are very important. By the way, the 16 alpha hydroxyestrone, this is the more inflammatory metabolite that a lot of research has shown that it can actually lead quicker to cancerous cells. So you're like, okay, I've got this pathway. Yes, for me, I make more of the 4-hydroxyestrone. So what do I do about it? Well, what I need to do about it is, one, be aware. I made myself aware by getting my DNA done, by knowing what's going on. So now I know I make more 4-hydroxyestrone. So seeing that I don't want it to be made too much, I want to kind of tone that down. What I can do is I can take compounds, foods with the compounds that lower that. Things like DIM. Okay, DIM is a great one. That is something that is found in cruciferous vegetables. Okay, things like sulforaphane is another compound in broccoli sprouts. Okay, all of these things, these, by knowing my genes, these are things that I can actually do about it. But I'm not done. I also need to look at step 3, my detoxification pathways. My detoxification pathways are not so great. Remember, I said this is more than just the speed. This is the fact that I don't do these very well. For COMT, this is the end of the methylation. This is what puts a methyl group on the substrate, on the metabolite, the sex hormone metabolite, specifically 4-hydroxyestrone that I was talking about that needed to be methylated, the 2-hydroxyestrone that needs to be methylated. That's what COMT does. COMT puts that methyl group on that, so that way it can change it to a more bioavailable, better form and clear it. I do that in an average rate. So that's good. I at least I know I'm doing that. And I can also do things if I need to help speed it up some. This works into supporting my methylation pathway. As you can see, my methylation pathway, not so good. And in my methylation pathway, which I will show you as we come down, this just gets into more detail from what I was just talking about. Let me jump down to that one more. Well, actually, that goes down. Bear with me just a moment. These are a lot of pages here. And jumping down, and no, it's not that one. I apologize. I'll just switch back over here. For my methylation pathway, for this, I have an MTHFR variant, so I am not working with my methylation very well. My SHMT1 is fine, and this is a gene that tells me, okay, I can use methylfolate, all right. We have other genes, our MTR gene, MTRR gene. We have our FUT2 gene. All of these genes, which are part of the methylation pathway, all very important. Looking at each one will tell me how my methylation pathway is not very good and how I can support it. Because it's not just a matter of going, oh, take some methylfolate. Not really, because not everybody can utilize methylfolate very well. There are some people with SHMT1 variants that could overmethylate themselves if they take a methylfolate. And this is where they need adenosylfolate in the form of folinic acid. I didn't say folic acid, folinic acid. Folic acid, when it is added into several of these supplements, it's actually a synthetic form, and it can actually block the receptors for your natural folic acid that you convert. So inside the body, the folic acid is what we want. We don't want the synthetic form. So we want the folinic acid. That's what we need to help support an SHMT1 variant in our methylation pathway. Through that, we also B vitamins, B12, super important, okay? If we want to support our methylation pathways, this is vital to make sure that we do it in the way that works with our genes. This is why it's important for you to support your hormones, to support your detoxification pathways, that you know your genetic profile. Let's target. Let's not just throw methylated forms of B vitamins at you. and then give you anxiety and headaches and having all of these other symptoms that come along with overmethylation if a methylated form is not right for you. Some people who have variants in their MTR gene, they are not able to take methylcobalamin, which is B12, very well. Okay, they could again overmethylate themselves. So this is something where they need adenosylcobalamin. And you'd know this if and when you get your DNA done. It's also something that, you know, when you're talking about methyl groups, okay, for example, in my particular pathway, yes, I am, I have a variant where I actually methylate at a 70% less efficiency, but I am okay taking methylated forms of supplementation. So SAMe, which is that universal methyl donor, it works well for me. So that is something I know that I can take. But is it something you can take? That's what you need to find out. The other genes that we look at, SOD2, which works as part of your antioxidation pathway. This is very important for the health of your mitochondria. How are your cells working? How are they clearing oxidants? How is this working to clear these harmful metabolites? We need to have strong functioning mitochondria. I happen to do this very well, but do you? This is what you can find out. And for the GST genes, like I had told you in my hormone pulse report, these are your glucuron, I'm sorry, yes, the glucuron, no, I apologize. That's your, the UGT genes is your glucuronidation. GST is your glutathione conjugation genes. Apologies there. Your glutathione conjugation, this glutathione is your master antioxidant molecule of the body. And this helps, again, to remove these metabolites, to help with the clearance. It is a phase 2 detoxification pathway. Very, very important. This is also something that we look at in your hormone reports specifically for anti-inflammation and in your general ability to detoxify with your cardiovascular system. And how does that work? Because estrogen metabolites, you know, these hormone metabolites, guess what? They affect your cardiovascular system because the hormones travel through the bloodstream. So they can cause inflammation of the cardiovascular lining. That's another thing that we look at. We look to see, how is your cardiovascular lining? How are you built? Are you more prone to inflammation? Are you very sensitive or not? And that's another thing that we can, you know, help support. So I want to jump in to the fact that this information empowers you. It gives you workable, actionable information on what to do to, one, protect yourself, what you can do to help move that dimmer switch into that position that helps make your life happier, healthier, you feel better, more energy, that everything's working right. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And I want to talk to you about the types of programs that we have, because it is very important that you know the tools that you have available to you. If you had participated in the Fast Like a Girl webinar or summit, okay, incredible information, wonderful, and very informative interviews, okay, across the board. It was fantastic. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, I do encourage you to go to Dr. Talks. You can purchase the summit. It is one of those things that when you're listening to these interviews from all of these brilliant people, doctors and scientists and, you know, clinicians and people working with these products and giving this information, every time you listen, you can gain more pearls of information, you know, start going, oh, it's really cool. I'm going to try that. Or, oh, wow, great information. I'm going to look into that. Or I know someone who could really use that. Wonderful information. So again, I do encourage you to rewatch those if you've already purchased Summit, or to go in and take a look and purchase it, because it is available going on drtalks.com. Just type in, do a search for Fast Like a Girl Summit. But getting from there, what it's all about is giving you information, educating you about stuff you didn't know, or that you knew, but didn't know different ways on how it could be applied. But it's not just about the information. It's not just about educating you. It's about empowering you. And sometimes when you get all this information, it's like a fire hose. Oh my gosh, what? Holy moly. Okay, too much. What do I do about this? And it's like, okay, now that I've got all of this information, how do I apply it to my life? It's like, this is great, simple information, but I need this more personalized. I have a job that I'm going to. How am I going to, work in the timing of all of this? I've got kids. I've got to make dinners. How am I going to do, intermittent fasting and work on this specific diet when the kids are clamoring for, pizza and chicken nuggets? Okay. You shouldn't have to be so stressed out to try to implement things to be healthy. So this is where the programs that we offer, and we have an array of programs. We have membership programs with coaching of various levels, how many calls you get throughout the year, how many emails you can get throughout the year. All of them do offer live webinars and question and answers, things like what we're doing tonight, but even more specialized. We offer also programs that you can get. For example, we have 3 different tiers right now. We have the Genetics Discovery Program, which generally works into 1 hour of a DNA audit to do some general covering, more of a broad brush stroke, diving in a little deeper into an area that you would like to focus on. It's around a 1-month program, but there is some wiggle room in there, but it's generally about a 1-month program. And with that 1-hour DNA audit, we also have a 1-hour cumulative of coaching calls, diving in and implementing the recommendations and habits that we go over together. And you also have opportunity for emails and questions. And like I had said before, we've expanded our services where you can work with an MD, you can work with PhD. I'm the only PhD on the staff right now, but with incredibly brilliant health coaches, NDs, naturopathic doctors. We've got MDs, we've got people who specialize in hormones, using the Wiley protocol. We have all kinds of, specialties across the board. We offer testing. So we can do all of this in-house. Another specific program that we have is our GMP, our Genomics Mastery Program. And this offers a more expanded program than the GDP because we give you a 4-month program. This offers 4 4-hour DNA audits, as well as 4 15-minute coaching calls. And also through there, you have access to emails and other support. Jumping into our top tier program is our Genomics Mastery Premium Program. Now with this, again, 4 months or a little bit more, again, we do have some wiggle room in there, depending on your lifestyle, your needs, whatever happens to be going on to accommodate the program. But we give 6 6-hour sessions. And that does include a session with an MD or a PhD. Okay, so if you don't have me for your genomics practitioner, if you have one of our brilliant, wonderful health coaches, you do get an hour session with either myself or one of the MDs or NDs. So that you do have opportunity for. You also get age rate, which is those tests which look at your biological age in comparison to your chronological age. And you can have an age rate assessment, for those results, or if there's another area that you'd like to focus on, we can do that too. There are other wonderful things that we have as part of that program, which more of that information, our wonderful team is dropping links into the chat where you can actually find out more in depth about these programs, what they all entail. I don't want to eat up a lot more of our time diving into that because you can actually take a look yourself. And with the nuances of them, because this is personalized for where you want to focus, for what you want to do, this is something that when you call, we can talk about and have you paired with the practitioner to best meet your needs. Because what I was talking about, you've got all of this information. You have all of your DNA. Say you already have your DNA results and you're like, this is great. I've got some information, but I don't know what it all means. This is what these programs offer you. We are here to walk you through each of your systems, to walk you through your reports, to help you understand at a level that is relevant to your life, to what you are doing, to your crazy schedule at work and long hours, and how can you fit in this and that, to the fact that you've got kids you have to deal with and husband, spouse, whatever that you have to accommodate. We can help you to understand where all of that fits in and what you can do. We take you where you are, not trying to fit you into a box or into a general protocol, but taking you, looking at your genes, which are very unique to you, and then asking you about questions of your lifestyle, of how things are working. What can you do? What can't you do? How can we shift things in your favor? And then we check in. How's this working for you? Having you have some accountability. How's this? Is this working okay? If it's not, okay, great. Let's scrap it. Let's try something else. We have so many tools, so many things that we can offer that we know through our own experience, through our expertise, that we are here to help you. And it's not just like a one and done or just this supplement or just this protocol. It's like, no, let's try these few things. Let's build some habits into them. If they work, great. Let's keep them. Let's start stacking. Let's try add on another thing and another thing to make it work until downstream, all of a sudden, you're feeling wonderful. Your issues, your chronic problems, your hormones are getting balanced. You're feeling so much better. And we keep up on that and we check in on you. And that's what we do. That's what these programs are for. They're personalized to you. So I want to open up the floor to some question and answers. I know that we've had some questions streaming in. And so what we'll do, before I start reading and going through these, I'm just going to take a little drink. I've been talking a lot. Not that I like to hear myself talk, because I don't, but the voice gets a little dry. Okay. I thank you all so much for being on this journey with me for the last hour. And I do appreciate you guys sticking around for the question and answer period. I do want to say any apologies if I mispronounce your name. Also, any apologies if I don't get to all of your questions this evening. If for some reason that I don't get to your question, it is important. And it's not that we are trying to, not answer everybody's question. So if I don't get to yours, please email our staff. They'll drop the link of where you can contact us to send in your question, and then we can see about getting that answered for you directly. So with that, I'm going to start working down the line. First question is from Kimberly Jackson. Question is, what would you suggest to a 45-year-old woman who is going to stop taking birth control after 20 years? Any tips or tricks to make that transition? That is a wonderful question. It is something that, again, I do want to say I am going to offer recommendations or ideas, but please, like I had said before, hormones is very nuanced. This is probably the one area I would say working with a practitioner who knows your history and who can best assess based on that history and based on your genetics can really hone in to give you the best recommendations. So this is a general thing, but and this goes for all the questions. I'm just, putting that out there, at first, because again, I am a doctor, but I am not your doctor. So these are general recommendations. So Kimberly, going off of birth control. First of all, this is something that I hope you are working with your gynecologist or the prescribing doctor to help work you through this, because your body has become dependent on these external hormones to dictate your cycle. And there can be a lot of issues with that. And it could throw you for one heck of a loop if it is not monitored and done in such a way to make sure that your hormones remain balanced as you are working through this transition. It is definitely a good idea to get off of them. Yes. Okay. Tips or tricks. I would say make sure that you support your detoxification pathways as you are working through this transition, because your body is going to go through like, what's going on? How come I'm not getting this particular hormone at this particular time? So you want to make sure the terrain of your body is as in optimal a condition as possible. So handle the low-hanging fruit. And what I mean by that, the basic things to make sure that your body is working optimally. And this actually goes for everybody, guys. Making sure that you are hydrated, that you are drinking at least like half your body weight in ounces. So stay hydrated. Make sure it's clean water, please. That you are drinking, like filtered water or reverse osmosis water or distilled water, and that you are remineralizing it. Okay, that you are taking some sort of trace minerals or, a mineral supplement, whether it be in liquid form or in pill form. You've got to have your trace minerals. Okay, you've got to have these basic building blocks that your body can use to heal. And I want to say, because I know this will help. This is part of an answer to everybody, okay? I want you to know our bodies are in constant healing state. We are always in a healing state. We just have to get out of its way, let it do its job. And the way you know you are constantly in a healing state is because you are alive, you are breathing, and you're watching this. If you scratch yourself, the bleeding is going to stop. You are going to get a scab, and then eventually that scab will fall off. You'll have a tiny little mark, and that'll heal. Of course, depending on how bad the cut was, you may have a scar. But the point is, that shows you that your body is constantly healing. Same thing on the inside. It's the same thing in all of our cells. But just like a house, in order to build a house, you need the wood. You need the tools like hammer, nails, screwdriver, screws. You need all of these things to build the house. If you're missing any one of those components, do you think you're going to have a strong house? No, not at all. So we need to provide those basic building blocks. In this case, basic building blocks, as in the trace minerals, as in the micronutrients. Okay, so we're talking zinc and selenium and molybdenum and, all of these, other trace minerals and vitamin C and vitamin D and A and, all of these things, as well as amino acids. There's 9 essential amino acids that we have to take in. Essential amino acids means that we don't make it on board. We have to take it from an outside source and take it into our bodies. So we need to have those because those are very necessary for all of our building blocks, because amino acids, that's how we make proteins, is the amino acids. It also is very important for our detoxification pathways. So we have to give our body what it needs. Another thing we need is we need to have good sleep. And this gets right into your, tips, tricks in that good transition. All right. This is where sleep is the foundation of that house. Okay, so you give your house all of the tools it needs to build a strong house. But what if you build the house on sand? Much rather build that house on a strong foundation. That foundation is good quality sleep. This is when your body cleans up the mess, gets rid of the toxins, including your sex hormone metabolites, all the stuff that can throw your hormones off. It's also the time that your gut microbiome does the cleanup work. It's also the time that your glymphatic system, that part of your brain that helps to flush out the toxins, these beta amyloids and these tau proteins and all the things that can cause neurodegenerative disorders, Alzheimer's, things like that. At night when we're sleeping, during deep sleep, the glial cells, that's where we get glymphatics, the glial cells actually will shrink up to 60% their size to help do a flush of the cerebral spinal fluid. If you're not getting that sleep, that is not getting done. That's why it's important. Also for REM sleep, you've got to have good REM sleep because this is when our brains are working, where we're putting our short-term memory into our long-term memory. This is where we work out problems. Okay, it's all connected. So those things are extremely important. Also, as I'm kind of going through looking at some of these other questions, I know another question you had, Kimberly, about birth control, about the different estrogens and things like that. Again, the specifics of the estrogens and the other birth control, that really needs to be dealt with your primary care physician or your prescribing physician as you work through. Now, if you have your DNA done and you get on one of the programs, we can dive into this a little bit better because we'll have more information. I don't like giving very specific recommendations when I don't have more information, a bigger picture, more pieces of the puzzle, telling me who you are, how is your life, what's going on. But I think that doing those basic things that I was telling you about will make a tremendous difference in that process. Now, Janice Shepard actually says, is codominant estrogen and testosterone the same as balanced? No. What happens is, you know what? I'm going to show you, I'm going to share screen because so that way you have a little bit better idea here. Okay, so I'm going to use mine again. Now, granted, I have an estrogen dominant profile. The reason being because the first thing, the rate of which progesterone turns into testosterone determines if you have a balanced or a dominant profile. Anytime that it is not red, meaning if progesterone, if it converts to testosterone at a slow rate, then you will have a balanced hormone profile. If it's anything faster than that, you're going to have a dominant profile. Okay. So that just means that you're making more testosterone that you're having to deal with. So that's the difference between dominant and balance. But when we get into estrogen, dominant, testosterone, or actually it's called androgen dominant, estrogen, and that's what we call codominant when you are estrogen and androgen dominant. That just means that you probably don't clear as quickly. That means there's more testosterone hanging around. You probably bind a little bit faster into DHT, or I'm sorry, not bind, convert into DHT a little bit faster. It means that testosterone would have a little bit more of a influence in your system, as well as the conversion, that aromatization from testosterone into estrogen is at a slightly increased rate. If you are anything other than red, you are going to have an estrogen aspect to that dominance or balanced. Okay. So that's where those are not the same. And I hope that better explained the difference there. And when it comes to like how you would feel about it, or the way that you are expressing it phenotypically, physically, this is where for someone who is estrogen and testosterone, basically codominant, where you would lean into either one of them really would be determined on your diet and lifestyle. What are you asking your body to do? Are you working out a lot? Are you at the gym all the time? Are you demanding your body to make more androgens? Then you'll lean in a little bit more to androgen dominance. Also with the fact that, certain foods, certain toxins will lean you into one way or another, especially estrogens. Estrogen dominance, like if you're co-dominant, you could actually lean into an estrogen dominant if you end up being exposed to a lot of endocrine disruptors, estrogen mimetics. We're talking phthalates, BPA, all of these different type of phytoestrogens. If they come into your system's like, oh, more estrogen. Okay, well, let's just, let's react as if there's more estrogen in the body. So therefore you will respond as more estrogen in the body, and then have these phenotypes working into how you feel, with more estrogen. So this is where we really need to be careful about our exposures to estrogen mimetics, endocrine disruptors, these compounds that we come in contact with that are in several beauty products, that are in hand soaps, that are on cash register receipts. BPA is in cash register receipts, yet the FDA is like, oh, okay, like lower BPA amounts. And, you see all of these BPA-free water bottles and plastics. But I hate to tell you, BPA, a lot of times they'll use BPS instead. That's not a whole lot better. And the fact that they still use BPA in cash register receipts. So again, it's being aware of this and knowing how your hormone profile can be affected through these areas of exposure. Okay, so let's say let's go back to our Q&A. And sorry, I know I'm going on to quite a bit of these, not hitting as many questions, but the answers that I'm giving actually provides answers to a lot of your questions. Oops, here, let me do these, mark these that I answered. Okay, so Irene Bragg asks, which genes contribute to the hormone dominance? Okay, so we've just gone over that. Beautiful. See, told you I'd rattling off information that ends up answering the question. So, all right. Debbie Pope. I am going to reach out, but I'm in the interim. Any chance you can suggest things I can do for carrying the 3-4 version of the ApoE gene? Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad you're enjoying this presentation. For the ApoE, for a 3-4, okay, so for everybody, this is the gene that is an LDL cholesterol. And what it does is it brings cholesterol from the liver to the site of inflammation in the cardiovascular system. We actually cover this gene in our cardiovascular profile. Now, when you have the 3-4 version, it's not a particular SNP, a single nucleotide polymorphism. And I'm not going to get into all of the details of this. We can cover this in another webinar, but you've got 4 nucleotides, your A, T, C, and G. And it's where those get switched around at one particular spot that's why it's called single nucleotide polymorphism, meaning many changes. So what this is, because it's a number, what we're looking at is the ApoE, the genes. There's an ApoE2, ApoE3, and ApoE4. We're looking at SNPs on these particular genes, and depending on which one of, where they are located, that gives us that profile of the number. So she's got it on the ApoE3 and 4 gene. And from this, that actually is a suboptimal profile where she doesn't metabolize the cholesterol, the fatty acids in her body as well. And how it presents itself is that she could have higher cholesterol and LDL levels. So that gives you a little bit of a background on what she's talking about. So for carrying that, what you would do is make sure that you have, you take good omega-3s. This is something where you want high quality. Trust me, you can't just go out to your local Walgreens and just grab an omega-3 off the shelf. There are differences, okay? You really want high quality. And there are several very good companies out there. We happen to carry it in our line, in our DNA inspired line. I don't know if we might be able to drop a link to our on our site in our marketplace for our supplements. We have It's Based krill oil, excellent quality. There are others that you can do, but definitely increase your omega-3s. Really try to knock down those omega-6s, those high linoleic acid seed oils. They're very inflammatory. And because they are so highly inflammatory, you're more likely to become inflamed in the cardiovascular system, therefore in need of the cholesterol in order to help protect that inflamed site, in which case you'd need more of the ApoE, the increase of the LDLs. So this is something that it's not about taking statins, okay? All that does is knock down the numbers, but it doesn't fix the root cause problem of why you are becoming inflamed in the first place. That's what you need to look at. You need to find out, okay, where and why are you becoming inflamed in the first place? What are the insults in your environment or inside your body that we need to address to make sure you're not becoming so inflamed? So this is exactly why, Debbie, I would recommend doing a program, choosing the one that works best for your budget and your lifestyle and everything else and the information that you want, where we can actually dive in and take a look at where would it be a problem that you would become inflamed where the LDLs would need to be utilized. Okay. So yeah, definitely look at that. Let's see. From an anonymous attendee, the question is, can you please comment on how blood sugar regulation might be impacted during perimenopause into the beginning stages of menopause? Good question. And actually, this was something I was very interested in, just in general, also because I'm perimenopausal myself. I am going through it. And it is important, again, first of all, to look at your genetics to see, do you have a suboptimal TCF7L2 gene? That gene deals with insulin regulation, as does the gene that works for zinc, which when it comes to zinc, we actually take a look at a gene that looks at the transport of that to see how it is utilized in insulin usage and transport. So those two things we can take a look at and see if you're optimal or if you're suboptimal. We know how to support that. But then when it comes to the regulation during perimenopause, because all of our hormones are going haywire, I mean, and it knows what it's doing. I just don't know what it's doing, and we're just trying to figure it out. So we also are impacting our hormone regulation during these changes when all of our hormones our sex hormones are tanking. So when we're looking at this, our ability to regulate our blood sugar does decrease as we go through perimenopause and menopause. I mean, that's just a given. We know this through science, through clinical study, everything else. We do know this. So by looking at your genes, we can say, okay, you've got this dimmer switch instead of this one. So we're working here. Okay, so knowing that, is it best to give you some supplementation to help regulate your blood sugar? Is it something where you need berberine, or is it something that we can actually work toward looking at your diet? And honestly, I really like to lean into food first before supplementation. Let's keep supplementation for what the name is, to supplement. So let's look at your lifestyle. And this is why a program is so awesome, because it's not just looking at your genes, it's looking at you, at your lifestyle. What are you doing? What are you eating? How can we shift that? Do you have any major sensitivities? If so, why? Is it something that there's a straight out allergy, or is it something that due to a gut microbiome dysregulation that is fixable, that you might have sensitivities to right now, that through some work, maybe elimination diet and some gut repair, that we can end up fixing, and you can start eating again? It's really diving in to say, okay, when we're talking about blood sugar regulation, first of all, let's track it. Maybe looking at getting a continuous glucose monitor. That really is kind of like, the ultimate in being able to see that real-time change. How is the food that you are eating affecting you? Because maybe there are some foods that, you're really good at, that, you keep steady, but there's others that absolutely spike it. Well, you may not want to eat that right away, and or doing techniques to help keep your blood sugar regulated, like going for a walk after you eat, having cinnamon, taking some of these other herbs that help regulate the blood sugar. So this is something that we might need to lean into that a little bit more during this transition. And I will say, and I'm going to work into the next question as well. When we're talking, Janice asked, how is codominant estrogen androgen interpreted in menopause? Again, it's the same kind of thing that our sex hormones tank when we are in menopause. How is that interpreted? This is where we really need to lean into your foods, your diet and nutrition. Because when it comes to codominance, we really have to look at diet, nutrition, and your toxic load, because those things more impact where your dominance is going to be, or whether you can get it a little more balanced in its presentation. Because we can't change the genes, but we can affect how they are made, how they are being represented, when those genes are being expressed. Okay. This is what epigenetics is all about. We want to manipulate our genes to our benefit. But this is where we need to know your genes, first of all, and more than just knowing your profile. Okay. There's a lot more that we want to look at, looking at your DNA pathways. So again, perfect reason to jump in and find a program that works for you, even if it's just the coaching, doing a membership for the coaching. So we can really dive into that real quick. Let's see. We've got a few more here. Lauren Lombardi. Okay. When you work with a coach practitioner, do you offer this type of breakdown of our hormones like I've done with mine? And I'm paraphrasing to make it, I think she asks, I have done my DNA report, but I need help navigating all the information and how to apply it. The answer is yes. Yes. Every single one of us will be, working through, diving into your report, looking at your hormones. You can actually request practitioners if you want to work directly with me. When you call and have a program, you can just say, hey, I'd like to work with Dr. Lara. Absolutely, you can do that. The others are also brilliant, have just incredible results and information that they provide for their clients. So absolutely, yes, we can do that. We got you covered. Shelly Rodriguez, she said, hi, being estrogen dominant like me, like myself, what foods are good to implement to turn it down? Okay, these are things like doing the cruciferous vegetables. This is, oh, by the way, I also want to say that we have a supplement, and I know I'm going to say this. I know I say lean into food first. Okay. And yes, there are lots of foods that we can eat and take that can help. But depending on any sensitivities, or maybe you just don't like some of the cruciferous vegetables. And when I say cruciferous vegetables, I'm talking about broccoli, cauliflower, things like that. The supplements that we actually have a female hormone E, which stands for female hormone estrogen dominant, that has the compounds to help with the regulation of estrogen dominant women. We also have a female hormone A for those androgen dominant women. So there are several things when it comes to estrogen dominance. A lot of it I would also lean into lowering your toxic load. And I will say this again and again, because we live in a toxic world. It's unbelievable when it comes to what we are inundated with in our water, in our air, in our food, everything. It's just, we can't get away from it. No matter how perfect your diet is, no matter how much you try to live in a bubble, it is impossible to absolutely get away from it. Even in organic foods, they have found glyphosate. They have found other toxins. So it's really important when we're talking about a lot of these toxins, like I'd said before, many of them are endocrine disruptors, estrogen mimetics. So if you're already estrogen dominant, like myself, I have to be very careful about what toxins I am exposed to. I do not handle cash register receipts. When I'm at a store and they're like, oh, do you want your receipt? I'm like, no, you can toss it. Generally, a lot of times, I'm really glad they're doing this. Do you want your receipt emailed? Yes. Take an email receipt. If you have to and if you need a paper receipt and that's all they've got, have them put it in the bag. If when you get home, just don't be handling it. Use a rubber glove or something. When you're doing your taxes and you've got all these receipts you have to do it with gloves on. Okay. These are just some little things, but that really is a major thing, Shelly, that I would lean into, not just with foods, but to really pay attention to any estrogen mimetic, toxins that you may be exposed to. Before I answer your last question about cod liver oil, for knowing these compounds, because you're like, okay, estrogen mimetics, what are they? I don't know what compounds those are. Okay. Someone's done that for you. Environmental Working Group. This is, if you go to ewg.org, they have done all the heavy lifting and hard work for you. It is incredible. They have a list of all of these types of toxins. They even have it where you can type in the product that you have in your house that you're using that you want to see. Is this toxic to me? You can type it in and it will give you a list. It will tell you all of the ingredients that are in there, which ones are toxics, which ones are fine. And then it will even give you information about these are verified clean products that you can use instead. It is a fantastic resource. So to wrap this up, because I know we're 1 minute over, last question that Shelley was asked by Shelley is, what about cod liver oil? Cod liver oil is fantastic. I take it myself. It is a wonderful source of omega-3s. Even more so, it is high in vitamin A. That's another thing that we look at. In your genes, it's the BCM01 gene, beta-carotene monooxygenase. What this does is it tells us how well you convert beta-carotene, which is the vitamin A form we find in vegetables, into the usable form, the bioavailable form for us, which is retinol. Some people don't do that very well, in which case they're not making the vitamin A they need very well. So cod liver oil is one of the first things that I recommend. It is a whole food. And like I said, high in omega-3s. It also has vitamin D, plus a lot of other micronutrients. So yes, cod liver oil, I personally use, and I'm not an affiliate, but I personally use Carlson Labs because I love the taste. They have a lemon flavor. I have tasted others. Don't taste very good. So that's the one I've gone to, and really, it tastes wonderful. So anyway, I will leave it there. I know we're 2 minutes over, and everyone, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I so appreciate you hanging in with me. I hope you have learned a lot. And if any other questions that you may have, please email us. I know that our fantastic staff, which I have to give major kudos to, they really make this webinar happen and run smoothly. I know they've dropped information in the chat for you, the links. Please contact us with any questions that you have. Also, if there's anything that you really want to learn about in these webinars, we can make that happen. I would love to, continue to teach you guys more, to get information out there, to educate you, to empower you, to make you the best you can be. So again, thank you for taking your time this evening with me. Really appreciate it. And I hope we can work together. Take care. Have a good night.
Thank you everyone for attending. We'll be sending out the replay for this session shortly for you to enjoy at your own leisure. Thank you again.